Thank you for joining us today. We have some announcements to make before we get started. This is the Friends of the Boca Raton Public Library. We are the adult programs. This is the Sunday Speaker Series. And today is our season finale. So we have a great presentation for you. I'm Faith Batt, and it's been my honor and pleasure to be your speaker series manager and facilitate this program for the past 4 years. And I want to shout out to Krista Mackey, who's the adult chair, and she's the one who gave me the opportunity to do this volunteer work that I love so much. And she's on the call with us. Hi, Krista. And I wanted to make a couple of announcements. Hi. We want to thank everybody for your support through this difficult, challenging year. We want to thank our volunteers. We want to thank the great board of directors who gives so much time devoted to all this volunteer work on behalf of the library. And it's the work that we do is so vital to raising funds for the library programs and outreach to our communities with the beautiful downtown Boca Raton Library and the Spanish River Library and all of the programs in their mission to serve the community. So the Friends is a nonprofit, as you know, and we raise the money and donate over $50,000 of support a year. And I also want to acknowledge all our wonderful volunteers and everybody who's been working to get the bookstore up and going. The bookstore is open now downtown, and not only online, but in person. You can come back to our bookstore. And I would say check the website for hours of operation. That's bocalibraryfriends.org. And you'll be seeing around town our beautiful mobile library van. And you'll be seeing it at events, and especially serving underserved areas that are not close to the libraries. If you haven't seen Story Walk, the early children's literacy installation at Pond Hawk Nature Area or George Snow Park, please go there. Take a nice walk with your children or grandchildren in nature and see all the beautiful storybooks we have. And it's just been another great season. So I wanted to, also especially thank our members for supporting us with their memberships and donations. We try to bring you informative, educational, culturally relevant and entertaining programs. We've been doing it on Zoom all year, and it's been challenging, but things are looking good, and we hope to see you in person in the coming season. And if you're not a Friends member yet, I want to invite you to join us. You can go on the library, bocalibraryfriends.org, and you can join us. It's only $35 for the year, and you get our newsletter and advance notice for all of our events, and plus you get invited to members only events. And for seniors, for over 60, it's $20. You get a discount. So we hope you'll join us. I just wanted to just recap. We had a great season. And if any of you missed the wonderful presenters and speakers that we had, you can view the recordings of them on YouTube. So you can go there directly, or I believe there's a link on our website that will take you there. We had author Dan Schutzer, PhD, From Cold War to Cyber War. Victoria Phillips, PhD, on her book, Martha Graham's Cold War. Chris Clunes is of 80s pop culture. Florida's history detective and author, Sally Ling. Jilline Schneider, Circle of Life, sharing her inspirational story of how she cured herself of cancer with natural healing. We had author historian D.L. Havlin on the Jacqueline Cochran story, who was a female pioneer in the aviation industry. And Dr. Rose Feinberg with her presentation on 3 Singing Women. And that was Barbara Streisand, Bette Midler, and Carole King. And last we had Richard Emery Jr., a former attorney for the EPA, on his book, Fighting Pollution and Climate Change. And so please, if you missed any of these, check it out on YouTube. Today we have a great program for you. Another very relevant subject to talk about, and I'm sure there'll be some discussion. We have joining us from New York City. I'm really thrilled and privileged to welcome you, Don Perlis, my dear friend and distinguished guest. And the topic for today is Don Perlis, a narrative painter for our troubled times. Welcome, Don.
Oh, hi. Nice to see you, Faye.
It's really great to have you. I'm really excited to have you talk about your current work and all of the inspirations that led up to it. And I just wanted to say that Don is a native New Yorker. He's been educated it's the finest schools in New York City, and was also a professor of fine art at Fashion Institute of Technology, FIT. He came into his age in the 60s with his first very major group show with a painting in the Whitney Museum. He's good friends with his mentor, Raphael Sawyer, and was also friends with other distinguished painters like Alice Neal. His works have been exhibited and sold all over the world. And congratulations on the 12 new ones you just sold in London. And Don's biography is just so long that it would take me the whole time just to talk to you about that. But you know, he's just won all kinds of awards and fellowships and accolades, and even a gold medal for one of his paintings, which he'll tell you about. He's literally had, I guess, 100 exhibitions. So please, you can see all about the galleries and the museums where he's exhibited on his website, donperlis.com. So please check that out after this presentation for all the details. Back in the early 1990s, my husband, Lane, who's a 13-time Emmy Award-winning producer, cinematographer, and editor, and I co-produced and co-directed a film that was based on Don Perlis and his work. And it was called Don Perlis, a New York Painter. It was a documentary that was exhibited at many film festivals, including the Independent Feature Film in New York, Feature Film Festival, the Fort Lauderdale Film Festival for those down here, and a lot of other festivals and cultural centers. The film is narrated by Academy Award-winning actor F. Murray Abraham, great talented actor who you may remember from that performance in Amadeus. And I would like to just jump right into showing the film. And then after the film, we'll come back and we'll be looking at individual paintings, and Don will be discussing his work. And we're going to see in this film a lot of the socially relevant paintings that he started doing back in the 80s. He's continuing, you know, from like the subway vigilante Bernard Goetz in the 80s to everything what's been happening recently with the killing of George Floyd. And we're going to talk about that and about the historical documentation. So right now, give me a moment and I'm going to share the film with you.
You have a feeling that, well, like in the old movies, that anything can happen in those buildings. You know, like anything can happen. Any dream can come true. Anything awful can happen. Anything wonderful can happen. You have a feeling of life's infinite possibilities from looking at the skyline. I do, still at this age, after so many years of living here in New York. I feel like I need it, the city, for myself. I need it to work. It's so in my blood that when I go away 2-3 months, I feel a physical need to come back. And sometimes I hate it here, and sometimes I hate it with a passion. I can't wait to get the hell out of here. And then I feel like I need it when I'm gone, because the sense of the city being a hub of the best and the worst things about modern life is really, really true. It's the center of civilization for me, the center of culture. And it's also the center of everything awful as well. If something horrible happens, it happens here first. Just like if something interesting happens, it happens here first.
It's one thing to say that great art comes out of difficult times. It's another thing to do it. It's really hard to rise above the oppressive conditions that so many people are living under these days. All we have to do is look around us. It used to be that the streets of New York were separate from the rest of the world. Everyone thought these things only happen in big cities, only happen in New York, but we're finding more and more that these streets where Don Perlis gets his inspiration, the place where he's lived all his life, is not only New York City any longer. These terrible, inhuman, anarchic things that seem to take over, or have taken over our times, are happening in the smallest towns. It seems like there's no rhyme or reason behind some of the terrible things that take place.
Many people will find the paintings disturbing, and I don't mind that because I don't really believe that the function of art is to be over a purple couch in somebody's living room. I mean, some kinds of art is okay for that. In fact, many kinds of art. But my paintings, especially these particular works, are not those kind of paintings. They're the kind of paintings that are trying to confront life as it is, fully, without flinching from it, and deal with issues that are very disturbing, deal with issues that are real and large enough so that it's almost a necessity to face them.
Getz was called a vigilante and the death wish gunman by the press, and he became a hero to many after he admitted that he shot 4 teenagers on a New York subway. Today, a grand jury, after studying all the evidence, refused to indict Getz for attempted murder.
If we were white, middle-class Americans, we identified with Getz. And the truth is, every one of us, someplace very deep inside our being, and it embarrassed us to say it, but every one of us said, yeah, good, good. The picture strikes at the very heart of individual prejudice. It strikes at the very heart of the bigotry that all of us have.
The Getz situation of a middle-class white man shooting 4 black boys and then disappearing like a vigilante into the dark of night. It became a very powerful myth right away. It cried out to me, almost cried out to be painted.
The paintings speak of emotion themselves in a way that everyone understands. When they see Getz in terror, recoiling, when they see Getz acting out his darkish, fulfilled wishes in a kind of falling down or death wish mode, they get all the emotion. They get the emotion that the passenger registers in the background.
All of this racial division that we have in society is very ambiguous, and there are both sides to it. And it really is not black or white, it's quite gray. Both sides are wrong, just like any kind of hatred is wrong. This is really the result of it, the ultimate extreme and result of it, which is bloodshed and violence and strife, and everybody's unhappy and nobody wins. When I made these works, I had no idea that the amount of social unrest would actually increase, and I'm astonished by it. And it just shows how deeply ingrained our society is with these particular problems, and how important it is to face them.
Don is painting outcries against the state of things in one of the last strongholds of humanist painting that I know of. He's creating a new kind of social realism that is quite head-on, direct, confrontational, and makes the viewer, I think, a bit uncomfortable, or a lot uncomfortable.
They never welcome black people in this neighborhood.
You see a black person, a colored person, first thing is you yell at them, you know? This is the way it is in this neighborhood.
Personally, I feel like a white guy in Harlem.
Hundreds of marchers closed off part of the Queens section of New York City today as they walked down the boulevard and past the pizzeria where, 1 week ago, 3 black men were set upon by a group of white teenagers who brandished baseball bats and tree limbs and reportedly shouted, "Niggers go home." 2 survived the racial attack, but the third, Michael Griffith, was chased into highway traffic where he was struck by a car and killed.
There's a tremendous amount of bigotry and prejudice that pervades our national life, and it's most evident in a place like New York City. And it's the most unspoken thing until something like the LA thing happens that's so big. In fact, nobody wanted to speak about any of this stuff, even the Getz stuff, the Howard Beach. Nobody wanted to speak about any of this stuff until the LA stuff happened, because the LA stuff was so big and important. It came into a public consciousness like it never was before. It can't be ignored.
My mother's not a violent person. Shouldn't have shot her with the shotgun. with a 12-gauge shotgun. And I mean, over some $89.44. You mean to tell me when we don't pay our rent, that's what's going to happen to us?
67-year-old Eleanor Bumpers resisting eviction for non-payment of rent. Killed, a blast from a police shotgun.
The officers went in knowing that there was an armed woman. They did their best to disarm her. When it became obvious to them that one of the officers was possibly going to get very seriously injured or killed, they used deadly force on the woman.
My kids up there, they're scared now. He said he was talking to a police a couple of days ago. He said he hates the police because the police kill people.
Picasso said, art is a weapon, and in this case, art is a public weapon.
At first, it seems paradoxical that events like Howard Beach and the Bernard Goetz shootings and the Eleanor Bumpers killing should be memorialized in painting, but we have a planned obsolescence in the media in this country, and Don Perlis's paintings, with their great sense of ambiguity and irony, are perfect for it. Don is a master craftsman, but more importantly, he has something to say.
A lot of our greatest artists have given us shock value. But what's ironic is, like, Picasso shocked through breaking down the picture. Perlis shocks through stripping away modernism and just approaching these things as narratives head on. They're very upsetting. They're very disturbing.
It is the ages of the accused, 14 to 17 years old, and the horror of their alleged crimes that has caused a furor. A woman jogging in New York Central Park last Wednesday night, raped and nearly beaten to death.
I don't want to understand what motivates someone to engage in this kind of horror. I want, rather than to understand him, I want him punished.
It is, to my eye, the most horrifying of the pictures in the exhibition. The world turned upside down, her world turned upside down most especially. But the fact of it being in black and white, I think, is merciful in distancing us from the event.
Another painting that's of great interest, of course, is The Sleeping Man. We see this every day. Matter of fact, you don't have to go into the subway to see it. You walk out the door and you're confronted with homeless people all over the United States. No one speaks for those people, so Perlis has spoken for those people.
You know, I'm not trying to make some kind of propaganda. I mean, this is my experience. I step out of my door on 9th Street and I step over people. And in a way, I have a belief in art, a naive belief that if you can communicate something really heartfelt and deep, it's going to move other people. And if you can present violence and people's feelings that they don't even want to admit to themselves, and then confront them with it, it'll be revelatory and traumatic and cause change. I do believe that.
He has a certain vision that he wants to pursue come hell or high water. It takes a lot of guts to make these paintings in this particular era. What he's doing just isn't done, hasn't been done for 50 years. I don't think I know of any art currently that's facing headline issues head on without sacrificing good technique. It's contemporary history painting. A lot of work goes into realist technique demands, which descends to us from the Renaissance.
Usually when you try to use Renaissance painting in a modern context, artists who are skilled still fail. For some reason, Don has been able to capture the flatness of Renaissance perspective, put bodily proportions in proper perspective, and still make his work look incredibly modern. In other words, the work is executed exactly, and yet the message comes from today.
I wanted to make something really real and touch. So the thing an artist does when he wants to do that, at least I do, is make a self-portrait. And I painted a large self-portrait of myself, and I took a year doing it, and it was in the year that I was leaving my wife and family. My wife, Terry, and I had a retarded child, and our marriage cracked up over the strain of trying to handle the whole thing, and it was very painful. The subway was a metaphor for leaving, a very frightening metaphor, and the fact that it coincided with this incredibly scary graffiti that was everywhere made it even more intense. And I painted myself holding on, really frightened, not knowing where I was going. And that painting was the turning point of all of these, of everything that happened after that, in terms of my work really connecting with my life. One of my most favorite quotes is a quote from de Kooning saying, "If you're an artist, you paint whether you're happy or not." I had painted all of my subway pictures that I had painted And not only the subway pictures, the Howard Beach paintings, the paintings that had to do with headlines. And I was really emotionally exhausted from it. And instead of painting about violence and strife, I wanted to paint about love.
Sleepers is beautiful, with the people sprawled out. Very romantic, very urban romantic painting. As if there could be some harmony between members of the opposite sex who are not of the same race through lovemaking.
I like the fact that they are upside down and larger than life. It makes them, to me, dreamy in their character. It makes me think a little bit of a Kokoschka painting called The Tempest, where these figures are flying through the air. That overhead shot, 9 times out of 10, is what you see just before disaster. It's a sort of God's eye view of the world. It may well be the future. When I see an interracial couple in New York, I have a sense of hope, of love triumphing over bigotry and prejudice and hatred. Love redeems us all.
I came out of reading this novel, which I read twice very slowly. It's called Love in the Time of Cholera, which was a novel about love, and a novel about old love. And it was the story of a man who had fallen hopelessly in love, a very poetic man who had fallen hopelessly in love with this woman. And they didn't get together until 50 years, some months and some days later. And they get together and have this fantastic love affair at the end of their life. They're both in their 80s. During the 50 years that he is not with his love, he becomes almost like a character, for me, out of a Fellini movie or out of a Lena Wertmüller movie. He becomes an incredible, lovable womanizer. Somebody who devotes his life to poetry and love and eroticism. And he has experiences with all of these different women, all different kinds of women, all ages, all different kinds of experiences. And he becomes wise in the ways of the world, wise in the ways of love, and wise in the ways of eroticism. And when he finally does meet his love in his 80s, he's ready.
In these Bordello paintings, which I think do descend from Demoiselle d'Avignon very radically, in these Bordello scenes, there's a lot of tragic comedy, and they almost, these particular paintings, strike a surreal note. Florentino Ariza reminds me of the MC in Cabaret. I mean, it's that same kind of, it's a decadent kind of humor.
People take art too seriously, and you need to interject some way to make them feel comfortable with what they're looking at. And if they can, it's not that it has to be funny, but they have to be able to find something, I think, whimsical. And to me, that's what these are. Plus, at the same time, clearly Don has a lot of statements to make about men and women, the relationships that they have to each other.
Well, Don, of course, is a great painter of the flesh, in particular of the female nude. And in his nudes, he uses his dark palette to contrast the suppleness, lusciousness, and color of the flesh.
Those are individuals. Their character comes through, their spirit comes through. For those who are lucky, 100 years after their dust, the paintings will exist and their spirits will survive, as Gauguin's nude women do, as Lautrec's nude women do, as Modigliani's nudes do, and so on.
When I look at a painting that's done, that Don has done of me, I feel as though he's taken an aspect of me and created something else. Something, it's like a kind of child of mine. He's taken something and he's created something that lives quite separate from me. And there's always a feeling of gratitude that he chose me to do it.
When you have this talent, you forget there's years of education behind it, because the viewer will say, it's like Joe DiMaggio catching a fly ball. It looks so easy, but it's not easy.
I always wanted to be a painter. No, I'll take that back. I always wanted to be an artist. I never knew what a painter was until I was in my mid-20s. I hadn't the slightest idea, or early 20s, I hadn't the slightest idea what a painter was. When I was a kid, I drew and painted incessantly and obsessively. When I was in the 6th grade, I remember falling in love with this girl. In those days, little girls wore dresses to school, and her mother had dressed her up, this little girl, her name was Barbara, in this beautiful pinafore, and she had these beautiful golden locks, and I sat behind her the entire year and drew the back of her head, and I didn't hear a word the teacher said. And every day I would spend hours, I was so madly in love with her, I hardly ever spoke to her, I think, and I just drew her, the back of her head over and over again, and the teacher would come over and angrily take the pictures out of my hand. At the end of the year, my mother was called to the school, and the teacher handed a whole envelope full of these drawings and said, "Here's your son's year's work in anger. This is what he's managed to do the whole year." And my mother was horrified, but I was really secretly delighted. Ironically, I've spent the rest of my life drawing girls' hair and still do it today. And so in a way, I'm doing the same thing as I did when I was 9, exactly the same thing. And I was even getting the same sensual pleasure from it. Because of circumstance, my father having had to support his whole family from a pushcart at the age of 15 and living through the Depression, I'm sure they didn't think being an artist was a very realistic thing. They thought it was quite an insane ambition for somebody with the kind of background that we had. So I was encouraged to be a commercial artist. Later, I was trying to get jobs in commercial art. My heart and soul were not really in it. I got fired 5 times in 1 year. I'd get my paints out in the middle of the day, and I'd start painting in the middle. I'd do a paste up all neat and clean in the advertising agency I was working in. I'd get my paints out and get the paints all over the rug, spill India ink all over a new paste up. I'd get thrown out on my can.
The reason that it's important, I feel, for people to see these paintings is because I like people, when they look at the work, to have a genuine emotion about what it's like to be alive in this time that we're living in, and to confront it fully and totally, not turn their backs on it. And it would be a very dishonest thing, I feel, for myself, not to confront these issues in my works.
I'm going to turn it over to Don. He's going to speak to you about these individual paintings. If anybody wants to ask a question, he's okay with it, a little interruption. Go ahead, Don.
This was also made during and slightly after a lot of those paintings that had to do with social issues at the time. And it was a self-portrait. And what it's illustrative of is how chaotic the environment was at the time. The subway is a complete mess, and I even have a hand at the bottom of a guy on the floor, kind of in the middle of the painting too. New York was completely, probably at its lowest point at that time, even financially. Everything was fairly negative. So the city was a real mess. So I try to do something positive about it just with my work, but this is what we're dealing with. So all of that, a lot of the crimes that were taking place in the city and all the racial unrest had a background like the one in this painting. And I painted myself kind of formally and dressed up almost like a businessman, just to contrast the chaos, that existed. It was kind of almost ironical at the time. You can go to the next picture. This is probably a lot of them, yeah. This is a picture called Leaper. It's in the Heckscher Museum in Long Island. And about 2 years ago, they designed the whole, it's a very large painting. I mean, I was astonished how large it was when I saw it. But because it took a whole wall in the museum, and they designed a whole show around it. And it's a guy jumping over the turnstile. This was actually meant as part of the Getz thing of these guys after committing a crime, or maybe before they committed it, guys getting together and kind of planning to do something nefarious. A copy of this painting was actually at Woodstock. I made a copy of it on wood, a really large painting, and maybe 12 feet high. And it was at the second Woodstock Festival, actually, as part of the fence that surrounded the whole festival. Next, you could, Oh, this is Michael Griffith running from at Howard Beach. He runs into traffic, actually. He ran into traffic and got himself run over. And shows and this is, you go to the next one, that's fine. This is Eleanor Bumpers, who was a horrible story of this grandmother from the Bronx who was a few dollars short of paying her rent, and she was mentally disturbed. And housing police came. I made a couple of paintings of her, and the painting shaped like a tombstone, deliberately. And they shot her and killed her. This is the Getz triptych, which I just call it Incident. On the left is there's basically 3 different subway cars, and on the right is another subway car that actually people could see through the window what was going on. So I have some of the spectators looking through, and it's the guy in the blue shirt in the middle is a self-portrait, and the central panel is the kind of a circular, kind of has a circular movement, and it shows 3 of the 4 guys who got shot, and Getz running out the door with an elderly woman, kind of hysterical, with the Lone Ranger on the wall. Yeah, this is a painting just of which actually you see daily today, which is homeless people like living all over the city, and it's pretty rough in the winter. But this was a guy that I saw in Astor Place. This is interesting that you put that together, because I'm probably going to do that. I'm going to have an exhibit this summer. First painting was bought by a private collector, and the second one was not. And I'm going to borrow the first painting back. And this is a gospel group, because this is also something that happens in New York a lot, and has happened more recently than in the old days, where entertainers would, entertain people on the subway. And I named the painting "The Mighty Clouds of Joy," which was my favorite gospel group. And the second one is a painting of them from the rear. And the first one is them into a gospel riff with passengers. This is 14th Street, Union Square, also subway performers and people coming and going. That's my friend Julio. Well, anyway, whatever. Oh yeah, that's my friend Julio on the right coming up out of the stairs. I just put his head in. It's kind of funny. Okay. Next, yeah. Oh, these are 3 separate paintings, but they're not meant to be shown together, but they look good together because they were done in the same period of time, and they show different performers doing different things to get money. And this is still occurring every day. I mean, you can't avoid it actually right now. Every time you get on a train, there's at least 2 or 3 of them, astonishingly. This is a painting that was done much more recently. It's a very large painting called Trump World, and it was right before the election of Trump, and so it was kind of a campaign thing. And I got a guy in an Uncle Sam suit, and in the paintings, all different people that visit Times Square. On the left, lower left, are the entertainers themselves, taking a rest, and then I have a family in the middle. Photographing the Elmo, and then on the right, I've got an Elmo fooling around with one of the girls, and then to the right of them is theater goers, and it's a kind of a typical night scene. And then above the Elmo on the left, on your left, there's a sightseeing bus. Looks like the side of a ship, but they're painted like that. And then all the commercial references that Times Square has is above that. These are all paintings that were related to that theme. I worked on these about after that group that previously you saw were the subway entertainers, and this is an incident of 2 people. I did a lot of paintings of the entertainers in Times Square interrelating, and in this case, Wonder Woman is like pissed off at Elmo, and that's my grandson in the upper left, actually in the middle, up in the upper middle, looking down. But you see all kinds of things there, and this could very well have happened. I have seen other kind of things like it, but not this. I made it up. Oh yeah, this painting actually sold to a collector in England recently, and it's a card game between the guys who work and the women who work entertaining the people. And then I've got some spectators and a cop coming in on the right, and it's kind of almost an allusion to 17th century Dutch painting, where they did a lot of small, wonderful artists who did these small paintings of barroom brawls, with guys fighting over with beer and over card games and things. I took a lot of inspiration from that period in European art to do this, but of course it's entirely different. This was a typical kind of Times Square still life that people have left already, but they left cards, and there's a pretzel and there's beer, and it's against the night, and it's a typical table that they have up there for people. Oh, this is another picture during the day of Trump campaigning, and tourists kind of enjoying the summer day. Yeah, this is three of the entertainers walking through Times Square, and there's a painting by Botticelli. Actually, it's a drawing of Dante, the poet, and Virgil, the poet, also walking through one of the sixth or seventh level of hell, and like on a journey, like a tour. And Botticelli is actually being led by the guy the artist, the wonderful painter who made the series. And so it's kind of a takeoff on that. But I call the painting Innocence because of the nudity, actually, kind of designates that. This was made after Trump. Actually, it was made before Trump lost, but it was a painting about what would happen after. And again, it's a Trump mask on a kind of it's a pastel, actually, one of the few pastels I've made. And it's kind of a chaotic table of junk and cigarettes and beer bottles. And I call it Trump R.I.P., rest in peace. Yeah, next. Yeah. Oh, this was a painting that fairly recent, actually, maybe a year or 2 years old. And it's called Love in the Time of COVID. And it's an allegory. It's an imaginary scene and of Harvey Weinstein and in the center, and Bill Cosby to his left, and Jeffrey Epstein to his right, and Mike Tyson on the very far left, and then to the right of him, Michael Jackson with his friends. And it's kind of a takeoff on Leonardo's Last Supper, and except that I skewed the symmetry, made it in a sense chaotic, and there are a lot of allusions to different people in the painting, like the Hieronymus Bosch, and there's an apple with a worm in it. There's a skull with foliage coming out of it. There are demons from Bosch. I put a priest in because of the Catholic Church, and in the sky, actually, behind the mushroom cloud, are all covids that are little red covids that are floating in the air. That's Trump. I call this painting "Turning the Tables," and it's all these people who've been accused of naughty things. And I have Harvey Weinstein, Epstein, Bill Cosby, Prince William, or is it Prince Andrew? I get mixed up. Clinton. I've got Woody Allen in there. Mike Tyson. On the left, I've got what's his name? Oh gosh, the financier. I forget the people's names. And then the guy in the middle is Roman Polanski, the guy with the white hair. And then below him, I got Henry Kissinger. And on the upper right, I've got Charlie Rose also in here. So it's kind of like a litany of people that are being accused of doing bad things, and Trump actually tilting the table up. Oh, this is another painting of Epstein. I call it "To the Island," and it's self-explanatory. And also the teddy bear underneath shows how young the girls are. So, and they're all toasting. But this is a painting that it's actually still wet, this painting. I'm still working on it. And it's a kind of a parody of the whole world situation. I've got all these heads of state behind Epstein, who's getting a massage. And Ghislaine Mackenzie, I think his name is, holding a fig leaf over her private parts. And I've got on the top, I've got Bill Clinton on the left, and Trump, and then President Xi, and then Putin, and then the Prime Minister, then what's his name, from South Korea, Kim Il-jong, actually, and then Epstein, of course, getting the massage. And I call this Epstein in Paradise, and it's still in progress, but I thought it would be interesting to people. It's a pretty large picture. This is a typical painting of a park that's near my studio, and I put a couple, and there's a Black Lives Matter movement happening down in the meadow, and a police helicopter like above. And it's a family having a picnic on a Sunday at the park is called McCarran Park, actually. This painting is also in a private collection now. Oh, and here's the Floyd painting, actually, which is the painting that was reproduced all over and on 5 different billboards.
New tonight at 11 o'clock, it's the new billboard over D.C. that you just can't help but notice and take a second look at.
That is an artist's portrayal of George Floyd's final moments. It's appeared in Minnesota, Floyd's home state, Los Angeles, and New York. ABC 7's Jake Korf spoke with the artist about what he's hoping to accomplish in D.C.
New to Washington's horizon towers a provocative work of art designed to remind us of an historic injustice that ripped the nation apart. As you cross the Frederick Douglass Bridge and turn toward the U.S. Capitol, a just-installed billboard on South Capitol Street catches far more than just your eye.
And to be able to come back into the city and see that is gut-wrenching, like it touches your heart.
The billboard features Floyd, a painting that depicts George Floyd's final moments. Beside it, the famous words of Dr. Martin Luther King, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere."
The injustice of it hit me so hard. I just picked up a pencil and started making drawings.
Brooklyn-based artist Don Perlis, so moved by Floyd's death, finished this oil on canvas in only 3 weeks.
I didn't emphasize the badges and the fact that these were really cops. I wanted to make a painting of a man or men committing an incredible inhuman injustice onto another man.
Perlis's first goal, create concise horror so no one will forget it.
My first reaction was, wow, it's very impactful.
It certainly worked for artist Kiana Clark, whose social justice-inspired murals dot D.C.'s landscape.
As a black woman and as a black artist, this is something that we've gone through for many years, and I think that the George Floyd situation kind of just brought it to light for the rest of the world.
First of all, shout out to Mr. Perlis for the amazing work that he's done capturing that moment through his lens.
Artist Damon Pinder, who has painted portraits for the mothers of young men killed by police, believes in using his talents to bring light to dark places.
I think Miss Nina Simone said it best, like it's our duty to reflect the times.
This artist's second and final goal, create conversations. Systemic racism won't go away without us working at it.
George Floyd deserves to be remembered. The tragedy of his injustice deserves to be remembered so it doesn't happen again and again and again.
I'm Jay Korf for ABC 7 News.
The amount of publicity was enormous. It went all over the world.
Thank you again to our special guest, Don Perlis, for sharing your work with our audience and wishing you continued success with your upcoming solo exhibition at Greenkill. We'll see you September, October when we start our next season. Thank you, everybody.